speeds of vehicles and tell us how many cars a day go by, how fast those cars are going during the different times of day. So we will put that on our list to go out and collect the data. Is there anyone that has any other comments or suggestions on this request?
I just want to mention, and Chief, I agree, some data collection out there would be great. Stop signs are typically traffic control devices and not traffic enforcement devices. So we might want to look at an option of a speed hump, which I think is later on the agenda, or something along those lines. And Fred is on the phone also on the call. I think is 10th collector, Fred?
You had to ask the question. I actually don't know. I think somewhere out there is, it's either 10th or 13th. So I mean, yeah, it's definitely something where, I mean, we got to be thinking about how traffic's going to be moving through that part of town, like, and just how everything ties in right there, because that's sort of a strange, I mean, it's a part of town that sort of is its own thing. It all sort of connects to Monmouth. I mean, there is Randall Way that goes over, F Street that goes over, but yeah, just trying to figure out what that collector is through there, if it's 13th or if 10th is one of them too, I think is a good question.
Okay. 10th Street's going to see a lot of truck traffic from the old D Stakes Mill, I do believe, as well.
Yeah, there's semis that go by all the time carrying big old truckloads of tires. They typically go slow, luckily.
So I was wondering about where 10th Street is as we develop that area south of there. So we probably need to kind of look at that too.
Yeah, isn't that big area becoming something else? I hear it's going to be more houses. I don't know. You guys may not know. But
do you mean the farmland to the south?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, there has been some housing proposals, and it's been working its way. That land use has been working its way through the city council.
Okay.
Processes that have to happen. I think long term, that's probably maybe not right there, but back in that area.
Yeah.
I just looked at it. So I mean, it's not a collector. I don't think we classify it as a collector right now, and it probably won't be a collector in the future, just because you look at the South Fork of Ash Creek. I don't think we're talking about a bridge across the South Fork in that location. So it will probably always sort of be a local road, but just, you know, given the connectivity issues to that whole southwest area, I mean, keep like trying to figure out how that fits in within the larger puzzle. I think it's still something that we got to figure out as part of that transportation system plan. Because, you know, I know that they're looking at things like F to move traffic, you know, like in east-west connectivity, and how, you know, given that how people then connect north to Monmouth and all that stuff, I think all of that is part of what we got to figure out as part of that transportation system plan.
Okay. So that's a maybe.
Well, so I still will have the data collected.
Okay.
And Fred, do you want to just do a real quick synopsis of what you're talking about? I don't know if, I mean, we have the benefit of having talked about this TSP for a long time.
Yeah. Let her know what you're talking about.
They probably has no idea what you're referring to.
Yeah, you know, Kai told me to give a presentation on the transportation system plan. So I actually I'm ready for a full-blown presentation. Essentially, it's a long-range plan to identify how roads are going to work and how different transportation modes or transportation methods are going to work in the city of Independence for the next 10 or 20 years. So you know, we're trying to figure out how we can accommodate things like cars for certain, but also things like walkability, things like transit, things like bicycles. And so that's really what we're trying to figure out. And when we talk about sort of the southwest area, that's where a huge chunk of Independence's future growth is going to occur. And so trying to figure out how people can move west and east just to that area and north and south to that area is something that we're trying to figure out as part of that plan.
So I guess I just want to add that, so maybe it is a maybe, but we're looking at it, and this is very helpful information that you're giving us, you know, and we'll collect some data and hopefully, you know, we'll see where that leads us.
Okay. Would it help if I got some, like the folks that live on 10th, their opinions? I mean, someone said try a petition. Any help with that? Would that help at all?
Probably not necessary at this point, but
Okay.
Kai Cottom, I believe, later in this meeting is going to propose a speed hump process. And I looked ahead in the packet and saw that there was a petition piece for that. So it could be in the future we'll have like a way to get speed humps, and
A speed hump would be great. Yeah.
the
I mean, anything to slow these racers down, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. I appreciate it. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Thank you for joining us. You're welcome to stay on. It's really,
you know, I have a 3-month-old who needs me right now, so I gotta go. But
okay.
Thank you so much for hearing me out, guys.
Thank
I
you for
appreciate
your
it.
time.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Do we have any other visitor or public comment? Okay, so Fred, I wasn't aware you had a presentation. Was that it, or do you still have a presentation that you would like to do?
I mean, boy, I feel like some of you guys have heard my spiel, and some of you will hear it again, but I mean, it's all up to you guys.
My thought was for Dennis and Rick, so to have some information, and then anybody else that was on the call. So I think we hit everybody I was hoping to get that's available.
Okay, and we have a meeting. We haven't had a meeting for quite some time with that group, but it's this week, isn't it? Like,
yeah, it's tomorrow at 6, and folks can. This community group is at 6. The technical group is at 3, and folks can call into the community group if they're interested in that, and they'll definitely be. I mean, they can participate. That works just great. I will say that you know. I really do think that, you know, I don't know how to say this politely, but it's like, I do think that we're going to need to figure out ways to conceptualize alternatives to actually help us think about the range of alternatives. Because some of the draft documents that I've seen so far, it leaves me with the thought that there's some alternatives that potentially aren't on the table. You know, at planning school, I had this professor that would make us come up with like, you know, 50 alternatives for basically any sort of land use idea, you know, like he really wanted us to sort of think outside the box and stuff like that. And just reading this document, I'm convinced that there's some things that just aren't there. And so I encourage you guys to think about ways to actually move traffic or move people through the community that potentially aren't in this document as you're looking at it. So I'll encourage you to do that. That makes sense?
yeah, you may need to give me more than that as we go, because I didn't go to planning school and I don't have
Okay. So let's look at the presentation. I got just a couple of things that Karen, can you run that? And I won't go into all the nitty gritty detail, but I mean, there's some just basic things that I think that we need to be thinking about. And we just have some sort of challenges that we're gonna need to figure out. Do you got that, Karen? One second. So I mean, one good example is like just even how to get west and east into the southwest area, right? That just, it's a fundamental challenge that we're sort of having to address here. And you know, we're sort of locked into the F Street Bridge. And so how does E and G relate to the F Street Bridge? How can we actually make that work in a way that makes sense? And is there anything that we can be sort of thinking about in regards to that whole system in the future, to actually move people effectively into that neighborhood? Because regardless, if we're taking G then F, then winding around F to E or whatever it might be, and then coming down 13th, that is not like gonna be a very good, a very efficient long range alternative. It's just not a good way to get west and east. And I know that we're talking about the southern arterial. I'm just, you know, being a long range thing that we absolutely need to do. But I'm just curious, are there other options that we can consider to actually get people effectively into that portion of the community? You got it ready, Karen?
Yes, I need Jason to let me screen share.
Okay.
Right now, Karen.
All right, so scroll through some of these things. So we're considering, keep on going, Karen. Keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. I mean, all right. So yeah, so anyways, we're looking for new routes, right? We're trying to figure out how to get people through the community, west and east, north and south, right? And when you think about that, it's kind of like, well, shoot, we're a flat community, it shouldn't be all that difficult, but we got these barriers, right? And that's those black lines on this. I don't know how well you can see those black lines. You can see those black lines on this. Those are all sort of barriers, right? You can see the South Fork of Ash Creek. You can see things like the railroad. You can see things like Ash Creek, right? And because of those barriers, we're really sort of limited how we can go around the community, right? I mean, it's just one of the fundamental things. And so we're trying to figure out how we can accommodate alternative modes, because here's like 60 cars, right? 60 cars takes up that much space. Next one. 60 bikes takes up that much space. Next one. And 60 people on a bus takes up that much space, right? And so when you consider, we're considering things like alternative modes and stuff like that, but just like, next slide, Karen. Just like the issue with the barriers, we have this issue of how to cross the barriers. And when you funnel all the traffic to these various points, like trying to figure out how to get pedestrians and bikes and transit through these points is just sort of difficult. And so we're going to need to figure out, like, okay, based on all of that, how are we going to actually allocate road space essentially, or figure out new ways to cross the barriers to actually get people through these spots. So next slide, Karen. So this is a good example, right? This is Monmouth Avenue, when you look at Monmouth, it's like, okay, this is a very important road for us, but it's also a very important pedestrian and bicycle route. It's also our main transit route through the community. And so, and I mean, I'll just point out that's like a 4-foot bike lane, which doesn't feel comfortable to ride a bike on at all. There's also like, I mean, there's quite a slope to it. And there's also the gutter pan throughout the course of it. So like based on that, how are we actually going to accommodate bikes on this road? I mean, fundamentally, we're going to have to figure out like, okay, do we want to reallocate space on Monmouth to potentially make the bike lanes bigger? Like, I know that the idea of expanding sidewalks is costly, is according to what Sean told me, just based on what it took to originally put the sidewalks in. So it's like, and you know, like expanding the right of way is just difficult. So you know, if we're working within this right of way that we got right now, we're talking the same curb to curb width. So how do we actually accommodate keep those other modes in this area, right? If we talk about increase in space for ped or bike or transit, then we're talking about potentially impacting how the space for cars, right? Now that might not have all that big a issue deal, but I mean it's definitely something to consider, right? Let's go to the next slide there, Karen. Another thing is like, this is Gun Club Road, right? You'll note that when we funnel all modes across one spot, you know, the Gun Club Bridge, it's like that bike lane right there goes away. The people gotta hop off their bike and put it on the sidewalk. I mean, maybe somebody could snake through that little opening between the barrier and the sidewalk, but I don't think that's the most comfortable thing. So like when we're funneling all our traffic, including peds and bikes, to certain places, just even how it crosses the barriers is a difficult sort of situation, right? Is that making sense?
I agree.
All right, so let's keep on going. The next one. Now also, given all these, oh, back one, Karen. So when we funnel all these all this traffic across these various, essentially these barriers, right? If we're funneling traffic to certain points, then it makes certain intersections just really fundamental, like, and how we address certain intersections, just fundamental. And so you'll note on this map, I just sort of identified key multimodal intersections. And you know, you look at places like 16th, you look at things like Gun Club, you know, they make sense as key multimodal intersections, but it's like even and we're doing some of them well. Flip to the next slide, Karen. This is this picture is at, next slide. This picture is at Monmouth and 4th, and you can see this is kids crossing the street. You can see that there's a pedestrian flasher, there's a nice pedestrian sign getting kids across. I mean, that makes some sense, but this is Stryker Road, and a bike lane is behind us, and it sort of went away a while ago, and it just sort of ends. It doesn't have any sort of thing pointing pedestrians in any sort of other way. And so you can see the quality of the ped is not great. The space for pedestrians is not great. The space for bikes is not great. And if we don't want people to come to this intersection, we got to think of ways to actually get them to another intersection, right? We need to figure out ways for folks to get through the community. So sort of based on all of that, and Karen, I feel like that's probably a good place just to sort of end the presentation. I mean, based on sort of all of that, go ahead and flip all the way through, Karen, and then stop sharing your screen. Based on all of that, it seems like there's just some fundamental issues that we got to figure out. Like, how are people gonna get through certain intersections, right? Like, I mean, what are we gonna do with things like Monmouth and Maine, right? That's a key multimodal intersection. We got people walking through it. We got people biking through it. We got all sorts of cars traveling through there. How does that intersection work? How can we get more traffic through when we all know that more traffic's going to go through that intersection? You know, there's certain fundamental issues that, just given the geography of the community, we need to address, because they're like, we're like funneling traffic places. We know that it's going there. We know that traffic's going through certain intersections. So it's like, okay, based on that, what do we do? Like, what do we do there? And just even that fundamental sort of like analysis of, this is a key intersection, these are the options here, just seems like something that based on how the document sort of drafted, you just sort of lose those fundamental questions, right? You sort of lose those that just basic, like, oh geez, Monmouth and Maine is super backed up and we're going to expect way more traffic here. It's in our downtown. What are options to address that intersection, right? The way that it's presented, you sort of lose those things. So I guess that's kind of what I wanted to encourage all of us to think about is, okay, what are the various alternatives, the various options that we have to get people west and east, north and south through the town, and how do we do it safely, right? Via all the different modes that we're thinking about. So I guess that's sort of my spiel. Does anybody have any sweet ideas about alternatives?
Fred, thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us.
Yeah.
No sweet
Yeah.
ideas yet, but you'll probably feed me some when we get together tomorrow, and then that'll
Yeah,
help.
I have one, but I don't know if it's feasible. But I've seen in some other cities where instead of having 2 bike lanes, they've got just one, and bikes can go in either direction. So the bike lane is actually a little bit bigger, but then cars absolutely positively can't go in it. They actually have some barriers between the bike lane and the traffic lanes.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm also, we're going to be discussing this a lot more tomorrow night. So, right?
We're going to be discussing it a lot more tomorrow night. The reason that I'm happy to go through this is because I want us to remember the big picture and to see the big picture and not get lost in the details. So
Thank you, Fred. Can you stay on while we go through this?
You bet.
Okay, perfect. So that was a staff report, and I am going to jump ahead and do the parking update. We actually had a meeting with Fred, Kai, myself, and Dennis Miller got together. Tim Hines was unable to make it as our little subcommittee that was established. But we have a draft of some language that would change the parking codes in Independence in a way that we think addresses some of the concerns. So I am gonna I'm gonna ask Jason to give me the ability to share my screen. And then I will push that out. Valerie, you should have got it in your email if you haven't checked it. Okay, good. It should be in there as a PDF. But I don't know who all was on that. I didn't look. Sorry. Okay. So where am I sharing? Can you guys see my screen? Hello?
Yes,
And what do you see on my screen?
I see the code for parking.
Okay, perfect. So Fred was very helpful in not only helping us word some of these changes, but he used the development code to get the language similar in both, and he wrote it up for us as we went. So thank you, Fred. In the very beginning here, you'll see that there is an addition to the definitions, and that is adding recreational vehicle, which wasn't defined previously. So it is just new language that pretty well has the definition apply to all types of campers, camp trailers, pull trailers, motorhomes, all those sorts of things would be considered recreational vehicles by this definition. Okay. The next change that I'll point out is here in letter B. We took out police officer and changed it with just the directions of an officer. And that was important so that our code enforcement CSO officers would have the same authority as a police officer per this code because they're not police officers. And I'll roll through here a little further. So in 9 here, that's where the language was that established that a connected combination of vehicles couldn't be longer than 23 feet. And that language was what was problematic for us to be able to keep a lot of the parking happening that people are asking us to stop, right? So Fred actually just decided that language should just go away. And we rewrote a section that we'll get to in a minute that talks about what wouldn't be allowed to be parked on city streets a little further along. In 9 there was an ad, so the provided that loading and unloading of buses may be allowed, just to make sure that it's clear that a bus picking up or dropping off passengers can be in the bike lane, which is standard practice in most communities. And then here in C is where the new restrictions really were put in. So specific language in number 1, it prohibits any vehicles, trailers, or a connected combination thereof from parking on a street at any time within the city if that vehicle, trailer, or connected combination is longer than 24 feet or wider than 8 feet. And then there's a couple of exceptions. If they're engaged in the delivery or receipt of cargo, and when no facilities or the receipt, and I can't actually see that other little part, that the receipt or discharge of cargo exists, that gives them the ability to violate that. And then if the person in charge is immediately engaged in the construction, maintenance, or repair of a public or private property adjacent to a street or parking strip, and no off-street parking is reasonably available. So construction or deliveries, they can still put their vehicles on the side of the road to do those sorts of things. And then no person in charge of any combination of vehicles and trailers engaged in the delivery or receipt of cargo under the circumstances authorized in subsection A shall park in such a manner that any part thereof project or be more than 15 feet into the street when measured at right angles from the face of the curb nearest to the vehicle or combination thereof. So that's saying even if they're oversized and allowed to park to load, unload, or do construction, they still can't come out into the roadway more than 15 feet. This is a big one, I think, as far as our community goes. This will be probably the largest change in number 2, any disconnected trailer. So yes, that is what we meant. We'll see how the community responds to that. So we're talking recreational vehicle trailer, we're talking little utility trailer, car hauler trailer, big trailer. It really just captures all of them in one line. So it was the feeling of that subcommittee that trailers shouldn't be taking up street parking if they're not hooked to a vehicle. They shouldn't just be left on the side of our streets for storage. And And then number 3, any recreational vehicle except for loading and unloading, not to exceed a period of 48 hours. Oh, and we'll take that defined recreational vehicle out because that's been done. That was a note to Fred probably to make sure you got that done, which you did. So go ahead.
Bob, this would eliminate the current ability to park for 15 days as a guest?
That is a great question. We didn't even consider that, Karen. I'm going to say yes, because currently I think the intent is that parking is allowed on private property. I know sometimes people use public parking for that 15 days, but that really wasn't the way that it was designed.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm going to say, yeah, it does.
Okay.
And again, we're going to see what the community thinks of our ideas. Somehow we're going to have to engage them and get some feedback. The 48 hours, we specifically put in there so that people could bring their RV to their house, prepare it for a trip, and then after a trip, have at least a couple days to get it unloaded and put away wherever it's getting stored. And then number 4, any storage container, and we did put without receiving city permission for a specific limited duration. And what we were thinking of in that line was like a pod, or there was one other, what else was it besides a pod, Fred? Do you remember? It seemed like there were 2 ideas there.
It's really captured in the next one, the whole solid waste receptacle. We were originally thinking storage container or solid waste receptacle could be on the same line, but we separated them out and made them 2 separate things.
Okay. Yeah, and so then the last one is basically a dumpster or a big bin provision so that you can have that, but you have to get city permission and for a specific limited duration so that we don't have it there forever. And that's it. Any other questions or concerns that hit people in the first draft there, like Karen pointed out? That was a good one, because we have allowed those temporary RV permits to be on public right of way, even though I don't think that necessarily that's what it was intended for in the beginning.
So
The
I'll
other question
just,
is
Oh.
who will be the city permission to grant these things?
It's a good question.
Isn't it the city manager or his designee or whatever designated person?
Yeah, normally that's the language that gets put in here, and that way he can have it live wherever he wants to.
I just had a question about the disconnected trailer. Should there be a provision for loading and unloading a disconnected trailer? And, we can think about that. That's just, I'm throwing it out.
We talked about it, and I'm struggling to remember what the conversation was. Was that we didn't think people would load and unload it if it wasn't connected, Fred?
that was essentially it. Yeah, we had the thought that if you're loading a trailer, typically it's hooked up. And again, you can have a all of these 1 through 5, they can totally occur on your property. So you could have a disconnected trailer on your property and load it up. It's just that you could not have it just parked in the right of way, if that makes sense.
I have a question.
Yeah.
We mentioned something before about no parking on front lawns, front of the houses. Is that something still being considered?
We did have some conversation about it, Fred. Do you remember what? Was that in the
Yes.
development code? Is that what it was?
Yeah, that's in the development code. And I can't remember what exactly we're thinking about. We were thinking specifically this code change here, since it's dealing so much with parking in a right of way, that this was specifically tied, that what we were trying to do here was just address how parking in the right of way occurs first.
Is the beauty strip considered right away, or is that's private property?
The beauty strip is right away. Yep.
The area between the curb and the sidewalk, it is right away?
Yep.
Is that true? Or were you, yes? So can people not park in it?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Kai, what's your thought?
Yeah, I would agree.
That will probably be something that needs to be clarified if this gets rolled out that way.
Yeah. Valerie, what were you remembering about front yards? Remind me what we had talked about previously. I need that reminding sometimes.
Just having either several vehicles parked in front of a house, or blocking the sidewalks, or a driveway. Some of the homes that don't have the driveways.
Was it, do you remember there being like a flat out request that people not be able to park in yards?
No, I don't know how the subject came up, actually.
Okay. That helps. Okay, so clarify beauty strips. Thank you. Anything else on that? So we'll clean this up a little bit.
Yeah, there was some conversation about businesses, home businesses that use, maybe park multiple vehicles on the street. I don't know if we can address that here, or if that's a totally different thing, or if we can address it at all.
We talked about that. Fred, I'll let you handle that one.
Yeah, that one's the one that I'm like really struggling to get my head around, because we have things like home occupation code. The intent of the home occupation code is that when people start a business in their home, it doesn't change the appearance of the home to make it look more like a business, right? Well, and I get that there's standards in there about how many cars can be parked out front associated with the home occupation. Now, the question that I have, and the thing that I'm most struggling with, is, okay, at what point and I feel like we probably need a code change for this. Certain businesses aren't necessarily a home occupation, right? If a person is a landscaper or whatever it might be, they're just storing their vehicles in front of their house because they're doing work elsewhere, right? Does that make sense? And so while I think our code deals with home occupations, I don't know how well it deals with things like work vehicles for things that aren't a home occupation, if that makes sense.
And can you limit how many parking spaces a particular home is allowed on public space? That's kind of where you're going to, isn't it?
Well, I think that, so how we sort of felt about this code was, let's address the public space and the fact that you can't park some of this stuff in a right of way, and then let's see if all of a sudden we have then a problem with people just parking tons of cars in front of their property. And then if that is a problem in the future, then try and address that problem then, but see what happens with this code change.
Like one step at a time.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
We also thought that the whole trailer piece of this change will eliminate the ability for a lot of those that we were getting complaints about. Specifically, they were like vehicles with trailers that were home occupation. Well, not even home occupation. People parking their landscape vehicle with a trailer, or just the trailer in front of their home. And so the idea that this would eliminate the ability to do that, and then see if that eased the pressure and see if some solutions came. So, okay. So we'll clean that up a little bit, and then I think my thoughts are to put out a press release to try to get some, public feedback. I think it's important to hear from people that this will affect directly. So we'll make sure we get it in the right circles of people so that they can then make sure that they have an opportunity to be heard. I don't think we're ready for council yet. I think probably we need to get some chatter going about it, get people excited one way or another, and then I don't know. I hate to take forever, but I feel like we should bring it back here and do that first round of that here at traffic safety, and then refine our change to go to council. What do you guys think about that? Great, nothing. I'll think it's a great idea. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Fred, for staying on. If you need to go, I appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. It's good to see everybody. See you more tomorrow, a lot of you folks. So take care.
Have a great night, Fred. Thank you.
Thanks for playing the flag game too. That was fun. See ya.
Okay, I'm gonna do my next report. Everybody, did my screen just change so that you're seeing traffic crashes? Maybe?
Yeah.
Perfect. So this is our traffic crashes between the last meeting and this meeting. And you can see majority of them were non-injury, but we have had a few injury crashes. Those were at 10 Deanne Drive and Hoffman and Gun Club and 5890 Talmadge Road and Hoffman and Airport and 51 and Deanne Drive. 51 and Deanne Drive has seen a few crashes in the recent past. Some of them injury, some of them we hoped that we made a difference. Kai and the code enforcement both worked on getting some elephant grass removed from the little market there, A1 Market, and they were quick to respond and got it gone in a day or two from when we thought it was a contributing factor to one crash. But then we had a crash there right after that it didn't have anything to do with that elephant grass not being there or being there. It was actually more in the intersection. It wasn't a person coming off of Deanne. It was a person going onto Deanne. So, and then,
yeah, code actually got them to cut that when I failed to. A bigger stick.
That was probably Officer Albie. She has a way of getting her point across pretty well to people. So that's the crash data. And then our citations and warnings report. You see, we cited quite a few people for speeding, quite a few people for driving while suspended, failed to obey traffic control devices. Those are mostly stop signs. We did do a pedestrian mission during the time between the last meeting and this one. And I would say all of those are from that. There were 4 sites and 11 people warned specifically for not yielding properly to the person in the crosswalk.
Yeah.
And then cell phones and all others are the last 2 categories. Any questions about those? Perfect. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we will move on to an update on the crosswalk request at Gun Club and Northgate, continued from last meeting. Kind of that one has your name by it. Do you have anything to say on that one?
The project's moving forward. I've got a meeting. Well, it was supposed to happen this week with Polk County. It hasn't been set yet. We will be putting a crosswalk at the requested intersection. And that was already in the plan. So currently right now we're trying to negotiate a left-hand turn lane there at Hoffman and Gun Club. So I think the county has some concerns. We do not, but the county has some concerns that I'm trying to meet with them and see if we can negotiate that.
That would be a great thing if you could make that happen.
Yeah.
Next up is request for digital speed sign on Main Street. And I think you had some data for us on that one.
I did. I talked to City of Monmouth. I didn't get any bids in this. Monmouth had one that they installed. I think Chief, you told me about it. So I talked to them and they're pretty happy with the unit. I think for us, it would be about locating where we want those, and Main Street may be one of those places, but I would definitely want to take some data in, I think, about speeding in the 85th percentile and look at those numbers and see where those signs are going to do the most good. The cost was about $12,600 for 2 signs. That doesn't include installation. So to put that in perspective for us, that's going to not only be a budget item, but our total sign budget for this fiscal year is $4,000. So we're looking at an improvement of somewhere north of probably $13,000 for one installation. So that's something we'll certainly have to figure out how we're going to fund.
That was actually, I'm looking at their document that you provided for the packet, and that was for 3. So each one.
That was for 3.
Yeah, each one was for a little over $4 grand, $4,048 for the unit, and then they had
Right.
hardware. It looks like probably
so somewhere around 9,000 for
a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the way they've got them up, if they've got them, so it would be either north and southbound or east and west. And I don't think we necessarily have to do that. We don't do that with the current speed sign. So, you know, we could install one and we could look at that. So I start budget in about, well, honestly, in January, we start budget, and then in earnest in February and March. So that would be something we could put on the back burner till then and get numbers again and see if we can get some of those in. I certainly think it's worth it. And Monmouth does as well.
Did we leave the traffic safety money in there that was in the last couple of years, that $10,000? Because if we did, we might be able to maybe do one out of that money.
Make sure we can see.
If we identified our highest priority, and then that would give us a chance to see if we really, it'd be really good to do it, you know, put our covert speed reading device out there and track speeds for a while before we put it out, and then install the sign. And that would be the closest to a scientific result we could get as to whether the sign really made a difference or not.
Didn't we spend that last year at, what is that, Marquee or Medallion?
I think that was 2 years ago. I don't know that we used any of it last year.
Okay.
But now we're in a new year, so I don't know that it stayed in the budget is what I'm not sure of.
I don't think it did. I'm going to look it up right now, though.
Okay. Any questions about the digital speed signs? We did have a request, and that's what prompted this additional research from a person to put one on Main Street. I think they want it fairly close to where we put ours often, our little portable one. I think they wanted it a little further south than where we put ours, but I do believe that one makes a difference in front of City Hall when it's out there and actually working. The battery seems to die pretty frequently, but when it's working, I feel like it slows people down a little bit. It's just a perception. I don't have any real data to support my idea.
Well, I know that when it's working, I can see, you can definitely tell that it's working because the cars tend to take a nose dive real fast right there at that, right before they get to the sign. So
About the time it actually tells them their speed.
Yep. Yeah, I don't see it in here.
Okay. Let's see, speed bumps, morning glory. I think that's another packet item that I saw you put in there. Kai, you want to talk about the Oregon City? Was it Oregon City? Is that right?
Yeah, it was Oregon City was that one. There's a couple of examples available online. They're all pretty similar. You know, I don't like inventing the wheel, so I thought I would look at a program that made sense. I haven't talked to anybody yet. I know Salem also has a program. But, you know, I think looking at a program similar to what that is, and that would be, I think, a reasonable approach to put it in. They're called speed humps. The reason they're not called speed bumps is because the MUTCD code, which is a federal code, does not allow speed bumps because that regulates speed below 20 miles an hour. So that is the engineering term for it. So I think they're 2 to 5. 2 to 5 is a speed bump. That's the average speed someone will go over it. And a speed hump is 15 to 20 and can be up to 25. So I talked to insurance about that. They said they are fine with speed humps as long as we follow the MUTCD code. So I looked it up, and one of the examples I looked at is a pretty expensive installation, and there's a lot of striping, which takes maintenance. So each direction of travel has 8 hash marks and directional arrows. Then you have, so that's 16 total hash marks, 6 directional arrows. You also have signage, and then the speed hump itself. That doesn't mean they're not a good solution for some streets. I think between engineering, public works, and the PD, we could probably direct people to that program and see if they can get a consensus with their neighbors. And I think probably put it to good use. I mean, again, it'll take some budgeting. But if that's something we seriously want to look at, I can delve into a little deeper. It looked like there were 2 options for the setups. One allowed emergency use, EMS basically to bypass them, which you need a median for that. One just went curb to curb, so you lose a little bit of parking. And then you do your courtesy notifications to your EMS partners that you're putting in a speed hump in that area. So somewhere like Marigold might be a great spot for the simpler one that doesn't require a median.
Yeah. Yeah, like between Gun Club and 16th, or the other way. Or either.
Just so you know, of course, they're not allowed on collectors, arterials, anything like that. You know, basically, if the speed's above 30, if it's 30 or above, nobody's putting even the speed humps down.
So what would it take for this to become a program at the city? Would that require, I mean, we should definitely share it with the city manager since I'm sure he hasn't seen it yet. But then would it require council action, you think, to have a program like that? Or do you think?
I could talk to Tom about it and see what he thinks. You know, our job is to make recommendations to council. So I think it'd be good to take it to council myself.
Yeah.
It might help with public awareness, getting the program out there as well, to get a little more polished. But yeah, I mean, I think there's, you know, I was looking at the agenda and that tells you that there's an issue, and we can't have 10 lances. So maybe we need a few speed humps.
Well, and I hate I don't like using traffic control devices to try to slow down traffic, because then we'll get the complaints that people are obeying the traffic control devices, and then it becomes an enforcement issue, you know, so.
I think it's a great alternative, especially to a stop sign or to writing tickets.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it go a lot farther than most people would think with the public.
Yeah, I think that was a great bring to the group. I didn't even know it was going to be in there. I was surprised today when I started reviewing the packet. I was like, oh, look at that, it's cool. So.
Yeah, I actually drove through an area in Salem. You know, that Salem's using them for a little different reason than we are. They're basically using them where people are trying to detour around traffic signal lights through residential areas, and that's what Salem is using them for. That's not to say that we wouldn't have a use for that as well. I'm not aware of any, and I don't think any of these requests are similar to that, but that's what Salem seems to be using them for. So
I think the other thing I like about this is it makes the people who are suggesting these speed bumps actually think about them a little more. They kind of look at the criteria and they think more than just, oh, it's going to stop traffic. There's, you know, the emergency vehicles and all that, how fast they're going and all that sort of thing. So I think it's a good idea.
I have a meeting with the fire chief on Friday, and I will show him that Oregon City model and give him a chance to look it over and see what he thinks, whether that would affect their abilities to respond with their large engines and things, because it has a really good engineered diagram in the packet. So I also have data for this request. This one came into our last meeting. This was Morning Glory, right, that brought this up. So let me go back to share my screen. Jason left me alive. That was nice of him. There we go. So there was an issue with the little machine that we put out. So you'll see the dates are all wrong, but in red, I put the date that we pulled the device down so that everyone will at least know on July 7th, we pulled this device and we had about 5 days of data on it. So this is on Morning Glory. And if you're not familiar with Morning Glory, it's a dead end street, just one, mostly straight. There's one corner in it, a 90-degree corner, and then it goes until it dead ends into a small cul-de-sac, and it's just full of houses all the way down. So this first day, you'll see 470 vehicles is the count, and then it breaks it down. The fastest vehicle, there was one at 39, one at 36, 4 at 33 miles per hour. And then the rest were between 1 mile an hour and 30 miles an hour. There's a better graph here. Here is a better graph, I think, that shows you kind of where the bulk of the cars are. Speed is up and down. So 9 is at the top and 40 is at the bottom. And then you can see how many cars by how far the bars go over. And it did it for both lanes, or for every day. I'm sorry, this is every day. So here's the next day, very similar. More cars this day, 574 cars traveled the street that day. High speed looks like it was 36. And here's the graph. So between 8 and 38, I guess 38 was the high speed, between 8 and 38 miles an hour. And this is the combined, so both directions, all the cars that went through. Here's the next day, 492 cars. I'm just going to go right to the graph. Between 7 miles an hour and 33 miles an hour, with the bulk being between like 17 and 28, it's like. Next day, 372 cars. Again, very similar responses. Lots of, actually a little heavier in the lower speeds on this one. So it starts at 8 miles an hour at the top and goes 1 mile an hour at a time all the way down if you can't see it very well. And there's the last one.
Wow.
And this one has a high speed of 40. There's one car at 40 on this one.
So a ticket would be 35-ish and over through there?
You know, if there were any pedestrians or other factors, they would go, yeah, it'd be still close to 35. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I see what you're saying. On this day, there were maybe 7 cars, if you happen to catch them, throughout a 24-hour period that were over 35. And really, I'll say over 35. So that takes you down to 5 cars because 35 probably wouldn't have gotten a ticket either. It probably, you know, oftentimes our brains just say that next mile an hour, 36 is where, you know, you start enforcing. We had data for a couple other days here. They're all very similar.
I think that last day it had a few more speeders. You got 11 from 34 to 36.
Which one? This one?
I'm looking at my screen, page 9.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, let me get back to the beginning. That one actually was backwards. So this one, we pulled it on July 13th. And high speed on this day was 35, 3 cars at 35. High speed on this day was 37. There was 1 car at 37. Next day, high speed is 35, 2 cars at 35. And 1 car at 36 and 1 at 33 on that one. So I very much like the idea of a speed hump. If it doesn't, you know, require a whole bunch of maintenance and it isn't an issue for the fire department. I saw that in the packet that Oregon City model had some 85 percentile requirements that speeds had to be below them. I think we would meet that on all of these studies that we have done. I don't know how, you know, if we're going to go out and pull our own data for that, that would certainly be the most cost-effective way to do it if we had a program.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay. Any questions on that stuff? I think the next step is really on those requests. 35, 36 miles an hour on that street is fast. I agree. If I lived on that street, it would feel really fast, like, you know, like yelling at the car as it goes by fast. If you guys know what I mean. You're standing out there and you see it coming and you're like, ah, yelling at the car. So it would seem fast. That street's pretty narrow and it's just one house after another all the way down both sides. And there's a lot of pedestrian traffic because a lot of kids live there. I think it's probably the most responsible thing we will have done if we develop a program like that, because we've always just said no. It's been the answers I got on this committee. So
I'm noticing one thing, and I don't know the times that they picked up the flyer from 34 to 36 miles an hour, but it's always 3 to 4 trips, leading me to believe they live down there.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. It's probably one person that's creating, you know, you're seeing 1 or 2 or 4 there. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. Okay, next update was request from a resident to do a speed study or a speed hump on E Street. And where's my packet? I remember what that one was. Oh, is that the one we actually got a signed petition on? Karen, is that the signed petition one?
Well, the woman who was here earlier was E Street. E and 10th was where she was looking.
I think she was 10th Street.
Yeah, but she was 10th and E.
I remember we had, yeah, no, we have one in there. There is a.
I saw the petition somewhere.
Yeah, there's a letter. It's page 21 of the packet. There's a letter and a petition from the group that lives down there. Residents of E Street between 10th and 13th.
Okay.
And they specifically even said a speed hump. Look at that. They used the right terminology, Kai.
They're talking to somebody.
Wasn't me. I just learned it tonight.
They've even got the petition already. That's great. Well, we might be able to use them as a model on how to move forward.
So I think I might have already requested data start being pulled, because this one came in a little while ago, August 2nd. I think I already put it on the list for the next up. So I should have data for this intersection at the next meeting and the 10th Street. And it's all kind of the same.
Yeah, it is.
Same neighborhood.
The petition for the speed hump is at E between 12th and 13th.
Yeah, that was so they have 2 different locations in the first page, the actual, like, looks like a memo to the mayor or staff of City of Independence. There it says between 10th and 13th, but then the petition says between 12th and 13th.
Okay.
So I think that they maybe narrowed down where they really wanted it, which would be E between 12th and 13th. Isn't that in front of the Catholic Church? Do I have that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. The Catholic Church takes up all but one house of that block on the south side of that block. So I don't know how much parking we want to take away in front of the Catholic Church, but I know that that street also has a stop sign, doesn't it? Right there at 11th?
13th and
11th. Yeah, there's a stop sign at 11th. So, but we'll collect some data on that one. First time that it's come. And then the last one, we already had Kylie. She was in visitor comments for the 10th Street. And that is the end of the agenda. Is there anything that anyone wanted to talk about that we talked about tonight, or something unrelated? No. Okay. Well, so I'll just verify with my notes that I'm gonna get traffic counts on 10th Street and on E Street between 10th and 13th. And talk to the fire chief about speed humps and whether or not the fire department has concerns. And then I will work with Fred to get a cleaner version of the parking changes, maybe just like a bullet point one, something that would be more of a something we could get out to the public instead of what the code, like the whole code would be, just kind of highlight some of the changes, like, you know, the city's considering not allowing trailers to park on the street, and see if we generate any concerns with that sort of thing. So I will try to push that between now and the next meeting so that we will invite people that contact us with concerns. We'll just make sure that it's known that people can come into the next meeting and share those concerns with us. I'll make sure as soon as I get something together that we send it out to all of the members of this committee so that you can disperse it into your own groups as well, your own neighborhoods. So other than that, I don't think I have anything else. So unless anyone has something for the good of the group. Karen, you got something to say? I see you thinking like you're gonna, no? Nope, ready to adjourn? All right, we will adjourn. It is 7:27 and we are done. Thank you all.